I was talking to, oh, I'm recorded now. I was talking to some of my colleagues just to kind of get a general idea of differences between like how money is in Morocco for younger people versus how it is in the US. And there are some really, what I think are some really big differences. But I'm going to go through the slide deck first, and then I'll share some of those differences at the end, because I think that would kind of change how you would be budgeting your money in the US versus how you might be budgeting your money here. And there might be insight that you all have that the people in my office don't, because they haven't been in high school for a while. Don't tell them I told you that. So the first thing that you guys want to think about is basically broken into 5 big categories. So you need to think about how much money you have, right? Your income. You need to make sure that you keep an accurate record of your expenses. You need to think about your fixed and your variable expenses each month. Then you're going to be deciding how you're going to allocate your money and establishing a savings goal based on that. The income that you have is different. I'm sure each of you kind of has a different amount of money that you have potentially coming in every month. For a lot of students, they're looking at money that they get for allowance, money your parents pay you to do work around the house or to watch your siblings or something like that. And sometimes kids also have money coming in from jobs. In the US, you're actually able to get a job at 14. So we have a lot of high school students who are working at places like Starbucks or a pizza shop, or even like at a Marjan. You can work, at a grocery store. You can work in places where you're, cleaning. There are a lot of jobs that high school age students have. You can also do like summertime jobs, part-time jobs, babysitting, all sorts of those things. And then it also is common for high school age students and younger to get money as gifts. For us in the US, common holidays you would get money gifts for or your birthday and Christmas. I don't know what holidays here that might apply to. So once you think about all the money you have coming in, you want to think about monthly, and then if there's any months where you might get more money or less money. So as a high school kid, for me, my birthday was in August and Christmas was in December. So it kind of balanced out nicely that I did get extra money in those 2 months, and it was something that I could plan ahead for. Once you know how much money you have coming in, you want to think about how you're using your money. And debit cards and credit cards were not as common for high school students when I was in high school, though that has really taken over what high school students use now. So it was a little bit harder, I would say, almost to keep record of what you were buying, because you're using cash to buy everything that you're buying day to day. So thinking about how you spend your money, you want to kind of categorize how you spend your money. Thinking about, every time you go out and buy a sandwich, or you buy, trying to think of something else, like a cup of coffee or tea, or get a soda, you would put that all together under food. You wouldn't want to track it all separately. And however you track it, it just needs to be a way that works for you. There are a lot of apps that we use in the US to track spending, and I'm sure there's apps available here as well. Or if you're old fashioned like me, maybe you want to write it down, pen and paper in a notebook or something like that. So then once you're thinking about all of the expenses that you have each month, you kind of want to break them into 2 categories. So some of those expenses are going to be expenses that are the same every month, and they're not going to change. Those are ones that change. So in the US, it's very common for students in high school to have car payments. So you're able to drive in most states in the US once you're 16. So you're able to have your own car. I would say it kind of depends on your parents, like the amount of money your parents make, as well as to whether or not you have your own car or not. But a lot of times students will have to make some amount of a car payment, and that amount is the same every month. So that would be a fixed expense. And then most students also pay for their cell phones or memberships to the gym or something like that. Your variable expenses are going to be all the stuff that kind of changes month to month. So going out to the movies with your friends, going out to eat, It's your mom's birthday and you want to buy her a gift, those kind of things that change. Now, this is the part that I was told that you already know about, so that's great. So when you're thinking about how you want to spend your money, you take that whole pot that you know you have coming every month. You set half of it aside for stuff that you need to pay for. And that's really just your fixed needs. So if you don't have a car payment and you're not paying for your cell phone, I'm assuming maybe your parents are paying for most of the food you eat. So your needed expenses might be pretty low, but 50% is supposed to be for that. 30% is going to be for just kind of random things that you want, a new pair of shoes, to upgrade your cell phone, to go on a trip, something like that. And then the other 20% is supposed to be what you set aside for savings. The savings is an important part in the US because using a credit card is actually very common, but our students usually have to take like a personal finance type of class in high school to talk to them about, the dangers and benefits of using a credit card. Students in high school can use a credit card. It's usually linked to their parents. So their parents would set the limits on it. But outside of having that access, when you want to buy something that's more expensive, you just have to figure out, how much it is and how you're going to save for it. So some big things that our high school students think about would be like a trip after graduation, right? A trip after you finish high school, or going on another sort of like vacation with just your friends. Sometimes it's just buying something that your parents don't want to buy for you. So buying like a new electronics, a video game, cell phone, tablet, those kind of things. And sometimes it works out that the 20% of your income saved every month is enough to pay for that. And sometimes it's not enough. And so then you have to just figure out, am I willing to spend or to save more money every month? Or am I willing to wait longer to buy the thing that I want? And you just kind of push out your budget based on that. And outside of that, I know that was quick. Outside of that, I didn't have anything else specific that I wanted to tell to you, but I wanted to make sure that we had time for me to answer your questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rachel. The presentation was very instructive, I would say. I hope that everyone felt the same way.
Hopefully I didn't talk too fast. I have a bad habit of that.
It was pretty clear. Now let's open up the Q&A session for everyone. Can you please say if you have any feedback, questions you would love to share with Dr. Rachel? Please go ahead.
So I think I will start. We're very pleased to have Mrs. Rachel here. It is such a great presentation. So my point is many teenagers or at the time where they're, studying abroad or, applying for college, studying in their college, they tend to slip up when it comes to deciding how to allocate their money due to maybe online shopping addictions or following trends, because we see a lot of teenagers rather starve themselves and not eat dinner and buy that new pair of shoes they want and other things like that. So is there any tip maybe you could share for those type of people, those type of addicts? And thank you.
Yeah, so that part's really tricky. And I would say there's adults out there even that don't have that figured out. And if you have access to online shopping, right, you can use a bank card or something like that. It can be really challenging. So sometimes I know people have used the features that the bank cards offer where they set a spending limit. So they only allow themselves to do like $50 or dollars, whatever. So they set a limit of how much they want to spend. And then once they've reached that limit, it's done. The really hard thing with having plastic as your money, right? A debit card or credit card, is it's so easy. It's so easy to just tap it and kind of go on. You have to log in to look at your account, and it's like effort to kind of pay attention to it. And so I think if it's not something that you're really dedicated to from the beginning, it's something you have to learn the hard way. It might be something that, you get stuck where you end up actually not having money for food, and you have to think about, what do I do now? And especially when you're thinking about studying abroad, maybe if you're staying with a family, that's one thing. But if you're on your own on a college campus, there's only so much you can do. So part of it, honestly, is just a point of like growing up and becoming responsible and realizing that while you might want that new fashion thing, you also need to buy food. So a lot of people, especially if they know that they can't handle credit cards or debit cards, they will write down their budget, like how much money they have, and they think about how much money they have for food for the month, and then how much extra money they have, and they actually put it in cash, and then they put that cash in envelopes. So they don't let themselves use a debit card or a credit card. And when they want to go out to eat, they have to use their food envelope, and they only have as much money that's in there. And then when that money's gone, it's gone. And so that sometimes can be a way to kind of track your spending. And then you realize, it's only the 7th or 8th of the month and I don't have any more money yet. Like I'm going out too much.
So first of all, thank you for being here with us today. I have a question. When you listed the sources of income, you didn't state student debt. So I want to know, is there a particular reason? And what do you think of it for students like us from Morocco?
Student debt?
Yeah.
So your student debt would not be a source of income. It would be one of your probably fixed monthly like bills, like one of your fixed payments you have to make every month. And usually if you're just starting, you don't have student debt. Like if you're just starting your first year of college or something like that. And it would depend on how your schooling is getting paid for. So there are some times where if you're getting a loan or a scholarship or something like that to pay for your school, they pay for it all at the start of the term. And then sometimes they'll give you like a little bit extra money that's supposed to go for your books and supplies and that kind of stuff. You don't, in the US, you don't pay that money back until you're done with school. So if you're going to like a 4-year college, you wouldn't pay that money back for 4 years. And so that's kind of another hard reality that university students see in the US, because it's kind of so far away that you don't think about it. And then you graduate and you're just starting a new job. And then now you have college loan payments that you have to pay. So if you know that you are going to be responsible for paying for your own schooling, that should be part of like the savings plan that you're making now so that you're prepared when you get there. Head nod, thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So part of the challenge there, I think, is that when you're in school, you get a really like being in college is amazing. And you get this idea, like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to change the world. Like, no matter what it is, you can be an accountant or a doctor or a teacher. And you're like, I'm going to change the world. And you study so hard, you get the good grades, you get the degree, your family's so proud of you. And then a lot of times your first job is starting at the bottom. And I think sometimes that can be a little disheartening. Like it can make you feel, what did I do all this hard work for if I'm starting down here? And it's also a big shift. So there's a big shift from living with your parent. Well, in the US, we don't live with our parents most of the time when we go to college, right? So it's a big shift of like living with your parents. And now I was on my own for 4 years and I was responsible kind of, but not really. And then once you get to a job, you're responsible for everything. So you're looking at paying for rent, paying for your groceries, paying for your electric bill, paying for your cell phone, paying for your car. And now I have a job I have to go to, and it feels kind of just not fun. You have to work a lot. You don't get to see your friends as much. And I think that shift, that transition can be really hard in the first year or two, especially if you're feeling like you're not doing quite what you want to do. But the good news for most people is that you will be able to gain the experience that you need to move up in the field that you want, or you will quickly learn, let's say you went into, I don't know all the degrees that are common here, but in the US, communications is a really common degree. So let's say you went into communications and you thought you were going to be a journalist and work for a newspaper. and you go and you do it for a year or two and you decide like, I don't really like this. There are so many other opportunities out there. I think that that's something that's more common now than was when I was in high school and college, is like, you just find a new job. There's so many jobs out there. There's jobs that exist now that like didn't even exist when I was in high school. So that's really a great opportunity that all of you have to kind of find something that's going to be your dream job and to help you achieve what you want to.
And so what I'm going to talk about is Gen Z individuals more, because since we all are Gen Z and we are more connected into social media and internet, so what is the most effective way to raise awareness about budget management to Gen Z individuals? And thank you.
I think something that Gen Z has to deal with that we didn't have to deal with before is social media, because I forget that other girl who asked, nobody's telling me their names, that first girl, when she mentioned it as well, you're getting constant images of things that look really cool, right? You're seeing people with all sorts of like cool fashion things, going out to fancy restaurants, and all of that is really hard to see and think like, well, I want that too. Like, I want to go to the nice places, and I want my boyfriend or my girlfriend to like buy me this fancy thing, and I want to wear the nice clothes, and I want to go on these fancy trips. And I would say the hardest reality is that so much of what you see on social media is not real. And a lot of the people that do, like, let's say they're going to fancy restaurants all the time, or they're going on fancy trips all the time, they're the lucky like 1% who have found a way to get those paid for. So they're not using their own money when they go to those restaurants, or they're not, paying for everything on the trip, which sounds like a really pretty cool job. But the reality is, honestly, it's hard work, and it's thinking about what really matters to you and what you think is important. And if you see, like, if you're following a page, or I don't know what it's called on, you guys have TikTok here, right? Sorry, I feel super old now. But if you're following someone that is constantly like showing you stuff and it makes you feel bad, it has to be a thing where you just realize like you don't want to follow that anymore, because it's not what you need. And the trick then is thinking about, if you're watching someone and every time you watch it, you then buy whatever they tell you to buy, or you think like, I don't have what they have, so I have to do something else. You have to think about if that is really the way that you want to spend your money.
How do you deal? So firstly, you gave us the 15, 13, 20 rule, which is a very good rule to have. But how can you deal with unexpected expenses within budget? Thank you.
Yeah, so unexpected expenses always come up. That's the hard thing. We have a common saying to expect the unexpected, and that's why. I would say when an unexpected expense comes up, that is when you have to consider maybe the money that you have in your savings. And it really depends on what that unexpected expense is. Like, if you need to fix something on your car, or you need a textbook that's really expensive and you weren't expecting that, if you get sick and need some sort of medicine that's more expensive than you thought, those things come up. And the only really way that you can pay for them is with a savings. Or if you happen to have a credit card, you could use a credit card. But I don't believe credit card use is as common here, correct? I don't know. Yeah. So credit cards are very slippery. They're a very slippery slope, though, because it feels like you have money. But the best advice I've ever been given related to credit cards, which are really nice when you have an emergency, is to make sure that you don't spend more on it than you can easily pay back, because it's so easy. And it happened to me. I think I got a credit card at my college campus before I even attended my first class, because all of the credit card companies come to the universities and they're like, you're 18, you need a credit card. You're 18, we'll give you a free bag. We'll give you a free, and you don't know, because it's like new and you're like, I'm independent, I'm grown up now. And then the next thing you know, you have a credit card bill that's just beyond anything you can pay for. So a lot of it is related to making sure you have your savings. And if something unexpected comes up, figure out the best way for you to pay for it. If you have money in your savings that you can use to pay for it, that's usually the best. If you have to use credit of some sort, that is an option. But if you do use credit, make sure you think about, how much money did I have to put into credit? And now how much money do I need to make sure that I can pay for that every month so that it doesn't negatively impact the rest of what you're doing.
My question is the following. Do you think that making a budget will often give you more financial freedom than living without one?
More financial freedom? I would say yes, because there is something very empowering of being independent financially, not having to call mom and dad and ask them for money and not feeling like you don't have money to buy food or something like that, and being able to know, like the guy that just asked, to know that if something happened, you have money saved up and you could take care of yourself. All of that is really like the essential part of growing up, where you gain that independence, where you know that you are able to take care of yourself if you need to. And I would say that the budget is a really key part of that. And anytime that your income or your expenses change, you want to make sure that you reevaluate it so that it's keeping up to date with what is actually happening in your life.
My question is the following. Okay, so during high school, do you think that thinking about making money can be a good option, or spending several years on self-development, including mastering financial skills, can be a better alternative?
I think it depends on what you think is going to be your purpose in life. And that sounds very deep for 9 o'clock at night. But as was shared, I'm a teacher. Teachers don't make much money. And I remember when they talked in high school about all the jobs that you could pick, right? People look at like teachers are kind of towards the bottom. And in the US, it's like teachers, firemen, police officers, nurses, they're all kind of at the bottom. And at the other end is like doctors, which sounds really cool because you see the money, architects, engineers. And then there's always like professional athlete. And I always laughed at the professional athlete because the money they make is so expensive. It's not even reasonable. But when you're thinking about what you want to do, what you have to think about is, do I care about what I do every day? I'm going to be doing my job 9 hours a day for probably the time. In the US, you work from about 25 to 65. So the job that I'm going to do for the next 40 years, do I want to do something that's going to make me happy and that is going to help me feel like I'm doing what I need to do, like to make the world a better place, or, to fulfill my own goal? Or do I just care about money? And I mean, there's definitely doctors who really want to be doctors to help people, and they do make a lot of money, but they go to school for a very long time. So I think you kind of have to find a balance between the two. And I would say that it is more important to make sure that you get into a career that you think you're going to enjoy than worrying about from the beginning how much money you're going to make, because the two don't always go together. And I would say some of the happiest people I've met, the people who love going to work, the people who love what they do, they don't always make a lot of money. They make enough, right? They have a budget. They make enough money to do what they need to do. But they're not the people that are like the top richest people where they live, because that isn't what's important to them. So I'd say make sure that you figure out what's important to you first.
What methods do you use to cut down on unnecessary expenses and save money apart from the 50-20-30? Thank you.
I would say the first method has to be realizing that you're spending too much money on something. And a lot of that might be when, before you get your next paycheck or you get your next income, you realize that earlier in the month, you don't have enough money to do what you want to do. maybe you're not coming up with that full 20% for your savings, or maybe the money that you set aside to be able to go out with your friends, maybe it's gone halfway through the month instead of at the end. And a lot of times what you have to do is just think about how frequently you're spending something. And you guys probably do way more cool things than me, but something that I would say that I do that is expensive, like it can add up, it can be expensive, is like go out to drink coffee or like go out to dinner, right? Go out to dinner and go out to lunch. Sometimes that's more expensive. So then I think about how many times in the last week did I buy a cup of coffee, or did I buy lunch, or did I buy dinner? And then for the next week, I don't do it at all. I make all my food at home. I drink only coffee at home. I avoid it. And then I see how much money it's saved in that little bit of time. And usually what you find is that you have to kind of find a balance, because you still want to spend time with your friends and you still want to enjoy your life, but you have to find a balance to what you want to do. I will say though, if there's something really important coming up and that you want to save more money to go and do it, then you have to make some sort of sacrifice. So maybe you decide for like 3 months, you're not going to go out to eat at all, because you're going to put all the money that you would use to going out to eat as extra money to go into your savings, because you're going to buy something big. And sometimes that's just a sacrifice that you have to make in order to pay for things.
All right, I think that was the last question. So thank you very much, Dr. Rachel, for your very insightful presentation on the topic. I'm sure the students have learned a lot. So guys, don't forget to take these learnings with you. And thank you, by the way, for attending, for the very smart questions that you guys have asked. Your active participation has certainly made it very engaging and interactive. So thank you very much. And I wish you a very good evening.